We're going to talk now about some of the accusations that have been laid out against multiple hosts at Fox News, but I want you to bear in mind as we go forward with this story that this clip contains content that some may find distressing or disturbing, including graphic references to sexual abuse, assault, and violence. We are not going to be reading the entirety of the claims. They're all available, and they're about as dark as anything I've ever read in this area. But what you should understand is that Fox News fired Ed Henry. This is news that we reported on some time ago. One of the network's most prominent anchors, and one of the ones that they had said they had pitched as sort of the up-and-coming newsman of Fox, after the network investigated a former employee's accusation of sexual misconduct against him. On Monday, just yesterday, the former employee sued Mr. Henry and Fox News, describing a history of workplace harassment and a relationship with the anchor that she said it included violent sex and rape. The woman, Jennifer Eckhart, a former associate producer at Fox Business, said that Mr. Henry had coerced her into a sexual relationship by promising to advance her career. That is one plaintiff. You also have Cathy Areu, a frequent guest on Fox News programs, alleged in the lawsuit that Mr. Henry had harassed her as well by sending sexually explicit messages. She also described exchanges with other Fox News stars, including the anchors Tucker Carlson, Sean Hannity, and Howard Kurtz, so some of the biggest names at the network, and she said that she called those inappropriate and sexually charged. So we're going to focus here on Ed Henry. Adrian, I know that you basically have the expertise that few others do in this sort of environment and fighting back against it. As you saw these charges roll out and found out more about what she alleges happened, how did you react?
Well, it's extremely unfortunate, and it's very upsetting, but at the same time, it's not shocking at all. You know, it's like Fox News has been sued multiple times for sexual harassment as well as race discrimination. Also, this is also the kind of environment that would cater to sexual harassment, as in it's predominantly white and male, and the way the power structures are set up, women have very few just access to resources. And so they need men as gatekeepers to get through, and these men are exploiting their positions of power.
Yeah, and the thing is, like, Fox News has already had sort of rounds of this happening before, of us learning more. I mean, they've made Oscar-nominated movies based off of the experience there. And so, yeah, the idea that they're fighting back, and Ed Henry is fighting back, saying, I'm going to fight this with every fiber of my being. It's totally consensual and all of that.
I love how they always say it's consensual. And it's funny, too, because a lot of people, at least I had an exchange this weekend on Twitter where someone had brought up something about a falsified rape allegation. And people always seem to forget that rape allegations are falsified in only 2 to 3% of cases. So, you know, if we're looking at numbers and statistics, you can probably say, hey, she's telling the truth. And so also we have to consider that Fox News fired Ed Henry, like a month ago in June, because they said they had just investigated some sexual harassment allegations against him. So Ed Henry really has a hill to climb in this situation.
Yeah. And let's just talk common sense.
Yeah.
If you're this woman and the biggest stars at that network, the biggest stars in the network that is the biggest network for all of right-wing media, propositions you explicitly, graphically, perhaps violently, what happens to you if you don't go along with that? Like, just in terms of common sense. We can't say for sure, but what would you imagine?
Oh, you're going to suffer retaliation. They're going to cut you out of their shows, opportunities. All of a sudden, you're no longer needed, and they let you go from the company. Like, this happens everywhere all the time, and it's complete and totally a consequence of turning down and rejecting sexual harassment or standing up for yourself.
Exactly. 100%. It would be so obvious to her, and obvious to him too. And that's why they feel that they can do it without any threat of retaliation. Now, thankfully, we have, thanks to the Me Too movement and affiliated movements, we do have some actual consequences. Not for nearly enough of them, and not nearly consequential enough. But now they're starting to be taught, I hope, that just because you use the threat of effectively ending someone's career to get them to do something, that doesn't mean consent the way that you think it does at all. And you know that. You know that. That's what you're relying on to do this. And that's the thing. She is alleging that the violent rape was perpetuated by Ed Henry, and she's explained the evidence that she has for that and all of that. I'm not going to go into detail into that. But She's been very clear about that.
Mhm.
And like, he isn't the only one that abused her. It is an environment where the male talent there feels like the women that are brought in to be commentators or perhaps even co-hosts and things like that, like, we know what they see those people as, and it's
Oh, they're seen
sickening to
as
see
fresh
that.
meat. Oh, absolutely. They're fresh meat. They're targeted and they're exploited for the fact that if you reject them in some way or stand up for yourself, you won't not only not work at Fox News, but you probably will never work in this industry in its entirety. So
Hmm.
you essentially lose your ability to make an income, your economic independence. So I actually have no concerns with these women waiting the time that they did to come forward, because you have to put it all on the line in order to get some semblance of justice. Also, we have to consider that Fox News, being a sexual harassment hotbed that it is, that back in 2017, they had paid out shareholders who sued the company saying, you are wasting our money by keeping these harassers around
Yeah.
and for paying all these backdoor settlements. So Fox News had to shell out $90 million to shareholders to fix that. But the thing we need to pay attention to is the fact that Fox News' insurance company pays that money. Fox News doesn't pay a thing. And all these legal fees,
Yeah.
those are covered by insurance. They're also tax deductible to a certain extent. So essentially, Fox News isn't feeling any consequences, nor will they, until their viewers pull out and their advertisers. But their viewers like the propaganda, they like misogyny, they like racism. So this is really par for course for them. It's just a question of, do the advertisers like it?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And at least up until the period of time that, Bombshell delved into, it wasn't like the management side just tolerated it. The management side participated in it. It was both the on air and off air sides of Fox News that were doing this. And if you are an up and coming woman on the right, a journalist, a legal expert, a commentator on a variety of different topics, what are you supposed to do? Like, in a very real sense, if you don't make it on Fox News, what happens to you? And they're making it, at least up until recently, very explicitly that is what you will be valued for. And if you make a stink about it, that will probably end your career. I saw the comments after Ed Henry's thing saying he's going to defend himself. There were like many people in lockstep saying that they don't believe anything that she says. Her career could very well actually be done after doing that, after bringing it up now. And we know there have been other women at Fox News that have filed lawsuits that are still gone. They have not had any media jobs since then.
Yep. And Britt McHenry has sued Fox News, and her lawsuit, to my knowledge, is still pending for sexual harassment against her co-host. And it's like Fox News just racks up these sexual harassment lawsuits, and then their insurers end up paying some amount for it. But, this is just a cultural problem in its entirety. And unfortunately, the people who suffer the consequences the most are these women who speak up and the women who also remain silent, because their careers are over. Their mental health, yeah, right. Do you think they can enter an office environment and truly be a contributing, productive member without freaking out and feeling triggered?
Yeah.
It's like you're just not normal after that. And so these are individuals in our society. These are people, and they are being messed up and wrecked by the beast every day, and no one does a thing about it.
Yeah. Yeah, and even like hopefully this is such a ridiculous, dark world. Hopefully many of the women who are not preyed upon directly in the same way that these two women and a number of others in the past have made clear, at least in the environment inside of Fox News. But think about what woman gets to be on Fox News without being explicitly sexualized.
Yeah.
Almost none.
Yeah.
Uniformly. It's like a joke, I guess, that they've had at Fox News for a long time, but it's not a joke. Maybe some of the women are totally fine with it. I have a feeling many of them probably are not. And in a similar way, would fear, rightfully, and that's delved into in Bombshell as well, that if they say anything about that, if they don't conform to this enforced, you need to look this certain way, you need to make yourself visually available in this certain way, you could be entirely done in media. The entire thing is so sick.
Absolutely. And I love it. Visually, you have to make yourself visually available. And at Fox News and these other places, you also have to make yourself physically available.
Yeah.
And it is the most disgusting thing, but it continues to be perpetuated in part because of the silence of this kind of quiet network of we're not going to talk about these things, but also because of the retaliation.
Exactly.
And again, These are productive, contributing members of society who could make, our GDP increase. They can make everything go better if everyone is working and able to do their best, but can't have that, no, because her goals have to be in power.
Check out the Damage Report podcast each day, wherever you get your podcasts, whether Pocket Casts or Stitcher or iTunes. You can join me as I give you the news and stories you want, with a range of co-hosts and interview guests jumping in on the fun each day. Again, that's the Damage Report, wherever you get your podcasts. And if you get them at iTunes, don't forget to rate and review. Sometimes I'll read them live on the show.